But you have something available to you that few others do. You have the power to actually sway the vote. The Conservatives and the Bloc were going to vote against. If you added your party's votes to that, the budget would be defeated, the government would go down. And that would be in parallel to how you describe this government. You have said Justin Trudeau is a failed leader who is bad for Canada, and yet you're not willing to actually vote in that manner. You are keeping them in power despite your concerns, despite saying something like that.
Well, the facts are Canadians chose him as Prime Minister. What we're doing is using our power to get the most we can for people. And if we voted against the budget, it would be voting against free birth control for women, free diabetes medication and devices, the child care, the dental care, the Renters Protection Fund, the protection for kids or the support for kids in school to get a nutritious meal. Those are things that we're going to support. We fought for those. We want those to move forward. Pierre Poilievre is against those things. He said right off the top he would be removing the dental care program for seniors, despite having dental care paid for with a publicly funded program for most of his adult life. He would take away the diabetes medication and the devices coverage, which we know is not only going to improve the life of people, save them money, but improve our healthcare system. So that's the difference between us and Conservatives. We want this to move ahead. But we've raised some concerns and we're going to fight to make sure that those are addressed.
But how do you reconcile telling Canadians on one hand, Justin Trudeau is a failed leader? That's your words. A failed leader who is bad for Canada. And on the other hand, essentially just telling them right now, Pierre Poilievre, I think would be worse, so I'm going to just support the budget and not make sure that they get toppled.
Well, that's not the frame at all. What I'm putting forward is that on their own, the Liberals would have done none of this. They wouldn't have done these things. They are absolutely failed in terms of what they've achieved in the past number of years. We have forced them to do in 2 years significant things for people. The pharmacare, the childcare legislation, the dental care, these are things we forced them to do. If we were not there, they wouldn't have done them. And we've noticed
they needed your votes.
They don't have the urgency to respond to people's needs. When we talk about grocery prices, they allowed grocery prices to exceed general inflation for 2 years before then they started making announcements and still have not yet taken concrete action until we forced them to bring in things like improvements to the Competition Bureau, more strings attached or more teeth attached to legislation to give more power.
Do you think it's you that forced them or public outcry that forced them?
Oh, we absolutely forced them. There's no question about it. Their approach was, on their own, was to call the CEOs and ask them nicely to lower their prices. And then Champagne then said, come out and check out. Minister Champagne said, look at flyers, grocery flyers. Prices are coming down. And then said, you know what, I actually don't know if they're coming down. That was the Liberals' approach until we forced them to bring in concrete legislation to give more protection.
Nothing's changed.
Even if we take that at face value, prices are still terrible
at
the grocery store.
Yeah. Well, so again, the changes have come in just now.
But you're keeping a government in power that is presiding over that. Like, you alone are responsible for keeping them in power and calling him a failed leader.
Well, I mean, I think that's not the fair way to look at this. The scenario is we're forcing them to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. Their decisions are their decisions.
You're keeping them in
power.
Their
failures are their failures. We're using our power to force them to do things they wouldn't otherwise do.
Nobody believes you.
The fact that the Liberals are failing people, that's for the Liberals to answer. If I was Prime Minister, I would take responsibility. I would own that.
Why do you keep voting with him?
Right now, Justin Trudeau is. And if he fails to bring in the sufficient amount for disability benefits for those people, he is failing those people. I'm saying that it should be much higher, and I would make it higher if I was in power.
And look, I understand that those questions on their policies should be directed at them. And believe me, they get those questions for sure.
Of course.
But in the case, for example, of the disability benefit, you had 2 weeks. What does it say that you weren't able to force any of those changes? And ultimately, if you don't, what is the effectiveness of the agreement that you have in place? He's a failed leader, according to you. He's not doing the things that you wanted for the most vulnerable Canadians. Like, what's the point?
It shows that he's out of touch. It's evidence that
but doesn't
the Liberals...
Doesn't it show that you are too?
No, it shows the Liberals are out of touch because it is
Take
the Liberals
ownership,
that are in power.
Man.
The Liberals are the ones that are calling the shots.
You're keeping
We're using our 25 MPs. Liberals have far more MPs. They're in power. They won the election. We are forcing them to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. We brought in dental care. We brought in pharmacare. We're making people's lives better with the power that we have. The Liberals don't believe that they can actually make people's lives better. They continue to act as if they don't have the power to change things. They want to just cruise by. They have no urgency. We're forcing them to do things. There'll come a time when there's an election. And I'll put to Canadians, look at how out of touch Justin Trudeau was as Prime Minister, how disconnected he was from the struggles you're going through. We fought and forced them to do things that made your life better, but give us the opportunity to be in power and imagine what we could do together.
I have to ask you the blunt political question. I just have time for one more,
Sure.
which is that people will say, you're not willing to take the step of voting against them or forcing an election because you'd lose. And you'd lose big in the next election. I looked at 3 separate polls. Angus Reid had you at 19%, Abacus at 17, Nanos at 16. Your fundraising is $6.8 million compared to $35 million for the Conservatives, 15.6 to the Liberals. Are you just not forcing an election because you don't think you can win?
We're going to have an election, and I'm ready to run as Prime Minister for this country.
Yeah, once you get your pension.
Until then, I'm going to squeeze as much as I can from this government to make sure people get relief.
But then could be
I
now.
want to see the
Yeah,
job.
you're gonna
I want to see
squeeze
the
us
job
thin.
done for the dental care. I want to see it rolled out. I want to see seniors to get it. I want to see them start accessing the program.
You're
And
never
then
gonna
people
be
can make
Prime
a choice.
Minister,
Do they
man.
want to keep the dental care program or not? Once they see the benefits of it, I want people to make an informed choice. Then Pierre Poilievre will take it away from you. I want to keep it and expand it. People can make a choice on it. I want to see people get diabetes, medication and devices, and free birth control. And then Canadians can choose. Do you want that to continue, or do you want Pierre Poilievre to take it away? Because we know Pierre Poilievre, what he wants to do. He wants to cut pensions. He wants to cut EI. He wants to cut dental care, pharmacare. He wants to cut all those things. I want people to have an informed decision
Government spending.
They
when they
could
make their
that
choice.
decision now. You could force that
It's not an informed decision.
now. You don't think any
Not
of
at
that's
all.
informed? You don't
It's
think
not-
you don't
because
think after
people don't
9
have-
years the
people
Canadians don't know
have-
what they're in for with
No,
this government?
People don't know the benefit of something that's not in there. Their diabetes medication is not covered right now.
But
Birth
don't you
control
think they
isn't
have
free
a
right now.
perception of the government right now?
No, I want people to make an informed decision around the benefit of these programs before Pierre Poilievre proposes to cut them. I want people to see, how does this improve your life? And then you can choose. If you want Pierre Poilievre to take that away, you want him to cut pensions, cut EI, and to cut these programs we fought for, people can make that choice once they see the benefit. I want to see people to actually benefit from these things and see how it changes their lives and reduces their costs, improves their health. And then people can choose what they want. They want to keep it or not.
So I read there is no chance of you being responsible for an election happening before the date that's set out.
Ultimately, we see that the Prime Minister and the Liberal government will call the election when they want. We're going to fight as hard as we can to get people as much help as possible.
Yeah, you
and
want
Pierre
your
Poilievre wants to
pension.
cut it all.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Mr.
Pension,
Singh, thank you so much for
baby.
coming into studio. I appreciate it.